Tales from the Whistling Pixie, written as told by Fallon Loreseeker. The Silver Sword of Haverl. Funny that my eyes drift once again to that portrait of the three knights hanging on the wall behind the bar. Its detailed depiction draws my attention and reminds me of what started this whole writing journey. The question my grandchild asked me after I had just told him the story of how I found the Sword of Haverl. I find it amusing that it was that story that started all this, for it was that tale that started it all. My parents were scholars, my human father a seeker of knowledge from Crim Dorin, and my elven mother a historian from Valoria. They instilled in me, through their constant wandering and seeking of lost tales, a sense of adventure. Granted, their idea of adventure was more libraries than forgotten tombs. However, the stories they showed and told me made me want to be a part of them. So when I came of age, I set off on my own. Well, not really alone. I met many interesting characters in my travels, but at first I was alone, with an idea. A crumb given to me by my parents. The Silver Sword of Haverl, bane to the undead and to the were creatures of the world. At least that's what I was told. So as I sit here thinking of what story to write down next, I thought that this should be the one, since it was what started this whole adventure. And with all my tales, I shall begin once. The midday sun would have been bright at this time of the day, but for the dark clouds that hung low in the sky, it was not. The ride from Krundlorik had been one of mind-numbing dullness. Fallon had expected excitement in his life after saying farewell to his family, but instead, he had one tiny escapade, helping a fellow adventurer find a farmer's missing sheep. Granted, it was not for naught, for he did find a scrawl on the cave wall where the sheep had fallen into the hole. The note carved into the sandstone spoke of Haverl, someone his parents had mentioned in their studies and had piqued his interest in the lost warrior and the sword. The message had his interest up again, and he journeyed to Krundlorik and its massive library, after a few days buried in books and scrolls in the city library, just as he and his parents had done for many years. A clue emerged. Haverl, or as many called him, Haverl the Unbroken, was born in the Crim Dorenian village of Crimcairn. So that's where his quest would start. Fallon had followed the clues and was now riding into the village, hot on the trail of the mighty warrior and his legendary silver sword. His first stop was the tavern, a strategic choice based on his experience and his parents' stories. Go where the drink is strong and the lips are loose to gather information and meet locals. The sound of iron on stone echoed from behind the little village, and many small homes dotted the surroundings. But only a slight trace of agriculture showed itself. Slim pickings for a bard, the elf thought to himself. He noticed a few women shaking out rugs and blankets, fine whitened dust floating with every shake. A few children ran and played in the only road that cut through the center of town, leading straight to the two largest buildings. One, an obvious tavern, and the other, a general store, he wondered, as he headed in that direction. He steered his mount towards the tavern and read the signs outside both. The Rusty Pick, and beside it, Quarry Office, stone and salt inside. He headed straight for the tavern door and opened it. The loud creak of a rusty hinge signaled his arrival. And the short man behind the bar looked up, his expression showing that half-elf was unexpected. He rocked right over and gave a slight bow. Fallon Loreseeker, bard and historian, at your service. He still added historian. I didn't know why, out of habit, he guessed. I'm here because of some stories. The man looked him up and down. So you say you're a bard, eh? Don't see any drums or lute. Fallon pushed back his long, raven hair behind his slightly pointed ear. I do have a flute tucked inside my pack, but storytelling is my stock in trade. The barkeep looked at him quizzically, wiping the bar with a slightly clean rag, pushing the ever-present white salt dust from one end to the other. Guess me customers could listen to a few stories, he said. The half-elf narrowed his almond-shaped blue eyes just a tad. When I mentioned stories, what I meant was, have you heard any, specifically about a man named Haverl? The man finished wiping the bar. Tell you what, elf, half. The man gave him a puzzled look. What? Fallon nodded slightly. Half. He pointed to his ear. Half-elf. The barkeep shook his head. Whatever. What we was going to say was, we'll share what me knows with ye, and ye tell a few tales to me customers later. What do ye say? Fallon smiled a traitorous smile, the smile of a man born to barter. A story for a story. Sounds like my kind of exchange. He looked around to make sure they were not overheard, but the empty bar quenched his conspiratorial fire. He looked at the barkeep. So, tell me what you know. The barkeep leaned in. The rumors are true. Haverl, well, he came from here. Born in Crimcairn about 400 years ago. Made a name for himself as a sellsword, he did. Had many adventures before he grew old and came back here to settle down. But before he died, he'd wanted one last adventure and set off for one. No one knows where he ended up, or at least mostly no one. My great ancestor knew him, and Haverl told him where he was going. The half-elf's eyes narrowed slightly more. And you're going to tell me where, but there is a price, right? The barkeep gave him a warm but sly grin. You be thinking 2 tales and 2 songs on your flute sounds a fair price, he said, going back to his nonchalant wiping the bar. Fallon smiled a wry smile. How about 2 good tales and 1 song? I'm not very good at the thing. It was the barkeeper's turn to narrow his eyes for a moment. Then he stuck out his hand. Deal. If you're no good, don't want you riling up me customers, he said, taking Fallon's wrist in a warrior's shake, sealing the deal. Fallon finished the shake and leaned in. So tell me, where is this place? The barkeep looked back at him sheepishly. Well, don't rightly know, bud, he said quickly before the half-elf could get upset. But I do have a clue. He paused and looked around the empty bar dramatically. He went where the trolls wander, and the dead hold vigil. What? That's all me got. That's not a lot, Fallon said, looking at the barkeep, who just shrugged. His half-open eyes narrowed again, feeling like he had just been swindled. The barkeep walked away as he sat and sipped his ale until it was time to perform. First came the tale of Bjorn and Talia and their forbidden love. Next the song, which was short and happy. Then the story of Sir Vorik and the troubles at Kerriseth. He stopped halfway through the last tale when it came to him. Grigalin, he said aloud, confusing the crowd, for the word had nothing to do with the tale he was telling. The confused crowd finally urged him to continue, and he grinned widely as he did. He had a start that would have to wait. He finished the story of brave Sir Vorik to an enthralled audience. He had been so engrossed in his own thoughts as he told the story that he had not seen the entertainment-starved crowd hanging on his every word. When he was done and stood, the crowd cheered for more, and feeling like he had gotten something from them, he obliged and told a few more tales and even played a couple of songs that everyone's stomping their feet to. The night was a joyous flash that he told tales and played songs, and by the end, it was quite late. The barkeep offered a cot in the storeroom, which he graciously accepted. This was the first time he had experienced anything like this night. His mind on other details and trying to get his performance perfect. He would have to remember that, because he'd wanted more of this experience. He sat in the cramped storeroom, sipping an ale, reminiscing on the day. He had gotten the information he needed. He had given the best performance of his life, made 30 copper and 10 silver pieces from the crowd, and added to the reputation of his name, Fallon Loreseeker, Bard.